On the 2nd of September 2025, Reddit user I Can't Be Normal posted "Annoy Spider-Man fans for 6 Black" in the Bad NTG Combos subreddit. Attached was a picture of the card "Behold the Sinister Six" from the recent Spider-Man Magic the Gathering set, with 6 legendary creatures from Magic's past sets, each a stand-in for one of the web-slinger's famed rivals. Mistform Ultimus as Mysterio, Octavia Living Thesis for Doc Ock. One in particular, however, stands out to me within this shitpost: Cheville, Bane of Monsters. This Ikoria monster hunter not only bears a strong resemblance to Kraven the Hunter in its art, as pointed out by many Magic players long before the release of the Spider-Man set, but its card also shares a similarity with that of Kraven's eventual appearance in this set. Both being Golgari colours with similar palettes used in their artwork. Both also draw cards off of prize creatures dying, Kraven hunting the next biggest game, Cheville going after specific bounties. The former speaks to more of that warrior spirit that Kraven is famed for, the latter leaning into a more roguish archetype, caring only for what his contract tells him to hunt. Trample and +1/+1 counters being the brawn to Death Touch's wiles. This was just one of the 6 gags in this post, and I didn't think much of it at the time until the full card galleries for Through the Omenpaths was released, and I saw Bracco, Heartless Hunter, an in-universe Kraven created to dodge litigation surrounding licensing limitations on digital card game depictions of Marvel characters, an Ikoria monster slayer tooled with Kraven's exact rules text, echoing much of what caught players' eyes with Cheville in the first place. It is here that the circuit becomes complete, where allusions to cultural touchstones within Magic transform into simulacra of those touchstones, which are then retrofitted back into Magic's canon. Ikorian Monster Hunter becomes Kraven, Kraven becomes Ikorian Monster Hunter, a simulation becomes a simulacra, Baudrillard spins with the turning of the earth. Dear viewer, I present to you the end of culture. I give you Magic the Gathering Spider-Man presents Magic the Gathering. Hello spicy people of the internet, I'm Spice8rack aka Saul Spiderman and welcome back to the channel. This video is sponsored by CoolStuffInc.com and you can find a full list of topics and themes discussed in the video with timings down in the video description. But if you really don't like spiders, maybe this isn't the video for you. For those unaware, Wizards of the Coast was unable to secure the rights to produce a digital version of their Spider-Man set, Marvel having their own digital card game competitor being the major obstacle. As a result, a bizarre compromise was developed where Wizards would produce 2 versions of this set, one in paper with your friendly neighbourhood Spider-Man, and a different version for Arena with entirely in-universe artwork and functionally identical errata. At the time this was announced, I anticipated one of 2 outcomes: an in-universe retooling akin to the Stranger Things and Walking Dead universes within treatments through Innistrad, or a fresh plane of heroic and villainous spider people. There were upsides and downsides to both takes. The former's deployment often created out-of-place game objects, a child retooled into an old alchemist with a conspicuously short typeline, and Friends Forever contrasting bizarrely with her threatening portrayal. But the latter was something Magic hadn't done before, and ran the risk of feeling like the expansion equivalent of a bargain bin knockoff toy line. Why play with Spider-Man in paper when you could play Magic Arena's Legends of Arachnidia? Explore a legally distinct world full of spider heroes battling goblin villains. If you pinch your nose hard enough, you too may be able to block out the unrelenting scent of corporate mismanagement. As it turns out, I was right in both regards. Through the Omenpaths simultaneously gave us a slew of cards from within Magic's already existing planes, a Mob Lookout easily slotting into the setting of New Capenna with some new artwork, whereas other cards featured a brand new world, one where spiders, humans and symbiotes commingle. Oris, last of the Weblords, shows a refined gentleman navigating the roofs of strange buildings which look like brutalist nests sat on a throne saddle on the back of a huge spider. The result is Look, I want to talk about these cards. The conversion jobs I find interesting, both good and bad, and also what they represent for Magic as a whole. To be clear, this will not be me analysing whether the Spider-Man cards are flavourful. I know the absolute basics about the character. Dead uncle shoots webs, radioactive semen killed his wife, the real 101. Another channel I'm sure has done a flavour breakdown of this set. But before my more postmodern takedown, I do want to kick off with some praise, or at least start by commending legitimately interesting attempts to bridge the gap between Magic's own world and that of New York City. I was going to do the Matt Berry voice for that bit, but he signed on to narrate Harry Potter audiobooks, so he can get to fuck for all I care. I loved Hatsune Miku's casting as Laszlo in What We Do in the Shadows. Really interesting stuff. Speaking of interesting stuff, Chosen by Valgavoth is a brilliant demonstration of how mechanics can feel radically different depending on the narrative context. This card is the Through the Omenpaths version of With Great Power, an aura which tries to capture what it means to be Spider-Man, to shoulder the city's problems, equipped with gadgets to protect the weak and needy, aka your sorry ass. However, Chosen feels far more sinister. We know that the cult of Valgavoth is a nefarious operation, feeding the demon the souls of the hapless and desperate. Go watch my video on Duskmourn for more info. So the pariah-style effect reads far more exploitative. The naive wonder of these cultists being distracted by a glamour of moths whilst gaping mouths and hungry eyes lurk just beyond the veil. Whilst With Great Power feels like a worthy creature is taking responsibility for your well-being, Chosen by Valgavoth, the name itself being an external decision rather than some moral calling, is nothing short of an existential setup, a near total reverse of the vibes of this card without changing any of its effects. Generous Betty Way is one of the few legendary creatures from the set which have translated well from paper. If anything, the Silver Sable card she's a retool of seems flavourless in comparison. Her doling out of +1/+1 counters sure represents her handing out weapons to her mercenary crew, but the lifelink feels like it was selected for its utility in Limited more so than what her leadership can accomplish. First or even Double Strike feels like it would have been more apt, equipping her squad with cutting-edge weaponry rather than guns which somehow heal. Betty Way, in contrast with her jovial artwork, feels like she hands out pistols and nourishment in equal measure. Her hero subtype also feels earned, both in art and in name. It's clear that this is a folk hero of Thunder Junction. Similarly, Verilax the Haven skin earns its subtype. I don't know Anti-Venom all that well as a character, so I don't really get the resurrection and damage conversion mechanics. However, the scene in which Verilax is shown displays both these mechanics clearly and then some. It shields this wee fawn through a forest fire, its glowing core matching the flames around it, a hero certainly, one who saves from certain death and who absorbs potential harm. On that note, I love how the symbiotes have been rendered in this as yet unseen world. Skipping ahead a little bit to talk about Desecret's Gift of Servitude, i.e. Carnage, Crimson Chaos. These hulking masses of semi-solid material, I pause to give it a more specific name like ooze or hide, are quite unlike anything else in Magic. The ambiguity as to what these things actually look like as you second guess locations of sensory organs or what certain appendages even are is genuinely intriguing. Desecrex pointing onward, commanding a risen corpse before it's even fully standing, it falling to pieces even during reanimation, is so evocative of a cruel master, one which would regard a short, enforced unlife as its puppet to be a gift. It would be my sincere hope that this plane be explored in a greater capacity in the future, though something tells me these interesting images will never be touched again. Returning to our order, Lost in Littjara is a brilliant example of how to coherently transplant non-magic design into magic logic. Littjara is one of the 10 realms of Kaldheim, the others being Immersturm, Brettegard, Notvold, Karfell, Skemfar, Axgard, Surtland, Istfell, and Starnheim. I just wanted to make a little rhyme that you could remember, so when the professor challenges you to name all 10 realms, you can just do it. It's not a very good song, is it? Litzjara is the blue-green realm of shapeshifters and trickster beings. Thus, it'd make perfect sense for a Norse myth about a warrior getting lost in their woods to 1. Exist within the canon of Kaldheim, and 2. Mimic exactly the mechanics of the Clone Saga, which this card is the Omenpath version of. Olk's Mouth to Many Eyes is not a particularly notable translation of Madam Web into Magic canon, but I mainly wanted to just point out how nasty it is. I have nothing else to say about it other than Matthias Kolros is sick and should be encouraged to make more art crimes. Secret Identity, much as I loved the Spider-Man artwork's homage to RK Post's earlier iconic piece Unmask, is simply charmed in the realm of Bloomburrow, with a masked rat saving an otter pup from some high-altitude caper whilst a raccoon gazes on, doubtless about to scold the rat for cultural appropriation. Something that does annoy me about both of these cards, I must say, is that Conceal and Reveal are the wrong way round. To conceal your secret identity means to don the mask and become the superhero, not to become a citizen. It makes more sense that the 1/1 hexproof mechanic is tied to the conceal flavor word in terms of what traditionally it means to conceal, but I feel like they could have just removed those words and let us develop our own conclusions as to what the mechanics represented. Ho and hum. On to the black cards I liked, and Hex of Undeath is a fun play on words. On to the red cards I liked, and Firebrain's scheme does what I wish Secret Identity did, cutting the flavor words. Heroes Hangout before it presented Date Night as an impulse-style draw effect, and Patrol Night as a simple buff for combat. Scheme forgoes the specificity of this framing, instead positioning these two options as the effects created by one of two planeswalkers in this scene, Chandra and Koth. Refreshingly, it lets the player decide which of these effects is being represented by each character's actions, rather than tying them to a specific name. Thank you, designers, for trusting your player base to formulate their own analysis. Galvanized Workforce shows militant workers protesting against the Riveteer gang in New Capenna. Are these scab troublemakers, or radical workers who are demanding more than the compromise with capital represented by the corrupt Zia Tora? If there's flavor text added to the card to explain further, put it here. If not, put a funny noise instead. Lava Brink Repels the Magma Loft 2 is a neat recontextualizing of the Maximum Carnage saga, positioning its first effect as a call to arms in response to a calamitous attack from an elemental behemoth. The second is simply the raw mana generated by the presence of the Magma Loft, and the final chapter shows the heroic defeat of the beast through raw damage. It may not be the most intriguing, but I do want to give credit where credit is due when these comic book storylines get reworked in apt ways. Quint's Insight is a reskin of Shadow of the Goblin, which I don't have much analysis for, other than I think that it's a hilarious image to imagine that all of the spirits Quinn has been talking to in the story are just Willem Dafoe Green Goblin voices in his head. Finally for red, I love how Wisecrack has been kept entirely the same in terms of name and simply painted over to be presented as a classroom prank amongst Prismari students. It's neat. And I'm allowed a touch of joy in my life, thank you. Miles Morales is a Golgari lowlife when stepping through the Omenpaths and becoming Kren, Undercity Dreamer. It's the only one of the flip legendaries from this set that feels like it makes sense. Sorry, Fleem. I'll save my negative comments for the next part of the video, but I love how his enter effect putting counters on up to 2 creatures implies that he and this spider from his front face worked together to ascend from the bottom rungs of Golgari society. What's more, it appears that their back face art takes place in Valor's Reach, the same arena seen in Perilous Lunge from the same set, meaning that this pair of combatants have ascended well beyond even the upper limits of their plane. Like generous Betty Way, it really feels like the hero subtype is earned on this card. Fate Weaver is an interesting one. The spider theme of this set feels deeply jarring in a lot of places, which I will get onto, as does the hero-villain dichotomy. However, this card feels like it weaves them all together, pardon the pun. This is Arena's version of Radioactive Spider, but here it weaves an Omenpath, suggesting the existence of some extraplanar inextricable connection between all of these spider heroes. It still feels like a somewhat hampered product created due to aforementioned corporate mismanagement, but this card at least feels like the designers are trying to say something about a multiverse of infinite possibilities being tied together in seemingly random repeat occurrences. Similarly, Web of Life and Destinies becoming literally through the Omenpaths on Arena is the kind of cute meta touch which I genuinely appreciate. King of the Coldblood Curse feels like it's set on Eldraine, where someone got hexed by the Temu version of whatever witch got Corvold. This, of course, is the lizard Dr. Connors, who... Why is the S apostrophe followed by another S? If you're trying to pluralize a word that ends in S, you can just put an apostrophe at the end of it, right? I don't want to make any big claims. Each time I dip my toe into grammar, pronunciation, or spelling on this channel, at least 40 of you pricks prove me to be a dumbass in the comments, but anyway, I like this version of Connors, where rather than imposing his lizard formula onto those around him, this now nameless king seems to have the world's worst Midas touch. This is also alongside a handful of other cards like Restless Razorkin, aka Superior Foes of Spider-Man, or Rhystic, Booed but Victorious, and Dreadfang Loathed by Fans, aka Ultimate Green Goblin and Craven Proud Predator, where the villain subtype feels apt. All of these characters either coming from worlds based on fictions in which heroes and villains are hyper-focuses, or playing the heels in gladiatorial arenas. Rouse the Swarm's artwork just makes me smile. The glittery border that enchantment cards all have now produces this kind of mirage where it looks like the spiders have climbed out of the frame, like you might see in an unhinged joint. And the fact that this nasty vista is the Omenpath version of Web Crawl, one of Spider-Man's more iconic images, is just the icing on a sticky cake. On that note of funny retooling, Kraven's Last Hunt, a storyline in which Spider-Man is fucking buried alive and the titular Kraven commits suicide now that he has no greater foe to conquer, gets remade here as A Trail of Teacups. Hilarious. On a more fitting line, Grow Extra Arms is a perfect Simic card. I have to imagine this was one of the first and easiest commissions for this digital set. Onto multicolored cards now, and wading through a sea of forgettable draft chaff legendary creatures, we have Cheering Crowd set in the seating of the Girapur Grand Prix, a neat reminder of one of Magic's more based bits of late world building. Maybe someone should release a video about that in the next couple of months. We also have the Spot's rather unique gameplay mechanics being placed onto a new character from Edge of Eternities, who seemingly uses Sothera the Supervoid's power to achieve the same kind of space-defying effects. But unfortunately, that's all the praise I have for this section of the set. Moving on, we have Giantcraft Helm. This art rules. You don't get to disagree. Phenomenon Recorder is a blessing of a rework. Obviously, Peter Parker's camera wasn't going to make the jump through the Omenpaths unchanged, but if the designers didn't listen to my baseball bat rant in my Duskmourn video, then they've certainly done wonders to sate my desire for immersion. Duskmourn's entire shtick when it comes to technology, at least in the wonderful lore as written by such greats as Shannon Maguire, was that it's the equivalent of late 20th century tech, but the many years where the house has been all Duskmourn's inhabitants have known, with all previous knowledge being literally consumed by Valgavoth, has rendered that technology arcane. So seeing something that's clearly an old home movie camera being renamed to something more fitting in this new context sings to me. Stitcher's Wings 2 rules, perfectly replacing the Goblin Glider, rocket-powered Goblin Glider's Revenant style effect, mirroring how the Green Goblin often returns from the dead in one way or another, bringing his glider with him. Instead, these grotesque wings are attached to what is brought back by Innistrad's Stitches, granting them the malevolent flight of a demon, an angel, and a file not found. Finally, I don't have a huge amount to say on the lands one way or another, other than Multiversal Passage also showcasing Omenpaths is a great addition, and that the artwork on Savage Mansion is about to spawn a whole lot of really messed up mimic encounters for D&D tables around the globe. And there we have it, my honest, fair, and I hope well-reasoned praise for this bizarre anomaly of a product. I'm a big believer that constraints breed creativity, at least when it comes to artistic requirements and not, the threat of homelessness, and I feel that the weirdness that was this set has produced some genuinely interesting results. Now let's talk about all the hack job shit that was never going to work no matter how hard creative tried. Okay, this one's going to be more of a structural critique rather than a card-by-card affair. I will point out how already forgettable cards like Shriek Troublemaker are rendered even more so when they're turned into legendary creatures from niche factions in unpopular sets, but it'd be a chore to listen to me point at a bunch of rectangles and say, I don't like that, over and over again. So, let's kick off with broad strokes. The spider theme is jarring. Unless you constantly hold in your mind that you're really playing with Spider-Man cards, there's no real cohesion to the aesthetic. Like, whenever a new set comes out, it's reasonably easy to pitch it, if not sell it, to a layman. This is the Egyptology set, this is the Magical School set, this is the Recognizable IP set. But with this is the Spider set? I feel like this is in large part an issue with the Spider-Man set itself. Spider kindred strategies don't really feel like Spider-Man. Yes, there is a constant spider motif and many spider people, but focusing on the spider itself feels like a punt rather than a home run. It's like when in Batman Begins, Nolan leant hard into the significance of bats as a symbol and tool of Batman. There's a lot more to focus on beyond the animal itself. It translates even worse into Magic's worlds. Suddenly, every plane is riddled with spiders. Innistrad at least had pre-established spider touchstones in Spider Spawning and Ishkana, alongside Theros' Nyxweaver and Arasta, but spiders were not a common type in Magic's history, and certainly not held in any kind of pride of place by any faction or world. Hell, only a little under 100 unique cards were or referenced spiders in all of Magic's sets until this one. Now, however, everyone and their mums suddenly cares about spiders. There's a robot spider on Kamigawa, multiple spider performers in the Rakdos cult, a blue-white spider buddy cop duo from Avishkar, a plane that has never had a single piece of art depicting a living spider on it previous to now. It feels entirely out of nowhere. At least with the new worlds, like those which are home to Skyvix, the Augmenter, and Oris, Last of the Weblords, you could conceptualize a spider-based society, but with no lore attached to these cards or product at all, it feels as shallow as a paddling pool. But on top of that, the additional theme of heroes and villains has no real connection to that of spiders. Again, understanding that this is a Spider-Man set does assuage some of that confusion, but you can't help but look at these cards and be perplexed. Why are there 2 random detectives in this product? What does the mayhem mechanic mean in juxtaposition against in web? Jumping from arachnomania to Bayo irritable instructor gives you whiplash. At least with Modern Horizons and Commander Masters, the buffet of interplanar vistas becomes the basis for a wide arrangement of old and new mechanics, a feeling like you're taking a VIP tour through Magic's most powerful characters and acts. Here, it's like a novelty zoo which houses loads of one kind of critter, but which ran out of specimens and has started putting house cats and delivery drones into spare cages. It works to a degree in Spider-Man because you already have an understanding that one card is about the Spiderverse and the other is a villain from it, but without that cachet of understanding, the background noise of a culture on the IV drip of Marvel IP, this is simply incoherent. The hero-villain dichotomy is also strange and strained here, even in the paper set. Subtypes are usually reserved for objective characteristics, species, and jobs, but hero and villain are moral and theatrical distinctions, something that runs counter to the up until now streamlined and clear types of this game. It throws up a bunch of weird incongruities with the game's existing systems too. Villains aren't classified as outlaws, as the type existed in the game before Thunder Junction, but only on silver border cards, and now, failing a messy errata, they will continue not to be. In the Omenpaths version 2, showing characters from existing planes, the question is raised as to if heroes as a type will exist within these in-universe worlds now. If so, type lines are gonna get real tight real fast. If not, then this set will feel even more of an isolated mess. Cards like Vigo, Enforcer of Ig's Crossing, aka Eddie Brock, are such weird objects to read. We've never seen this character before. We have no story, no flavour, no concept for where Ig's Crossing even is. So how can we understand Vigo to be both a hero and a villain? On Eddie, it's a nod to the fact that Venom becomes an anti-hero, saving the day in a brutal and destructive fashion, but Vigo is presented simply as a dual protector and destroyer, akin to most werewolf cards from Innistrad's history. Will these two now need to be considered heroes and villains? Nil, Vessel for Valgavoth, doesn't interact with any Duskmourn cards outside of Restless Razorkin and Withkar Cocoon Keeper, also from this set. It's simultaneously redundant and obtrusive. It's also poorly utilised. Only 9 cards care about villains and only 1 cares about heroes as a type here. There are so many heroes and villains in this set, but outside of some removal spells and a handful of creatures, you'd never know there was ever a theme. Some of the villains too feel completely off. How on earth is Fleem a villain? I get that everyone loves Fleem. It may be the first time Wizards has successfully recreated the spontaneous magic of Fibblefip since Return to Ravnica, but some of these types simply don't feel right. Hydroman Fluid Felon is a villain, I agree. Bellion the Parched is just thirsty. Get him some salts and a Lucozade and stop judging him. Look, the good section of this video is longer than this part, not because Through the Omenpaths is more good than bad, in fact, it's the opposite. In order to drill down into why some of these cards are good, I have to go into further context, pick apart theme, and look into artwork. The bad is so much more succinct to explain because it's pervasive. For every Arch-Angular Skyrod, a fun bit of world building that recontextualized Peter Parker's web shooters to be the tool of some angelic angler in a sky full of fish, there are half a dozen sourceless remakes. Ademi of the Sky Shoots, Etzli of the Thousand Moons, A Most Helpful Weaver, Lively Leap, Sarn of the Silken Throne. Cards which don't feel like they mean anything or have any story to tell. They are just hasty pieces of wrapping taped onto a regift of an already disappointing product. Some of the wrapping doesn't even cover the edges. Remarkable Readings is a card whose mechanics simply do not match its flavour. This is Friendly Neighbourhood. Here, the somewhat pedestrian mechanics, if you'll pardon a pun, at least makes sense. It's just a street, teeming with life, which houses a community that'll feed you body and soul if you let it. Through the Omenpaths, however, depicts an armoured wanderer on a strange land approaching a ley line of pure white energy, so its ability to create citizen tokens of all things is completely at odds with the narrative. This could have been an aura depicting a Capenna cafe or something. It's just so strange. Bite the bullet, Watsy. Commission a version of Hopper's Nighthawks but with rhino gangsters sitting in isolation from each other. Why not? I mean, nothing has to have meaning anymore. There's a phrase, if you can't be good, be memorable. And I fear this set cannot be. It is a ramshackled repackaging of an already strained set of cards whose main draw isn't fresh mechanics or carefully planned closed systems of interaction, but simply to be recognised, to be understood as simulacra of things you remember liking as a kid. It doesn't matter that Venom and Spider-Man and Doc Ock and Spider-Man and Spider-Gwen are common creatures with zero interesting mechanics. At least with Skoa as Magic's sole new border common legend, you had the novelty of her being common, whereas here it just feels like cheap padding which cheapens the super type. It doesn't matter that Websling and Mayhem are just fixed versions of ninjutsu and madness. It doesn't matter that the hero-villain types stray the bounds of acceptability when it comes to Magic's type line. All that matters is that you can buy the card and look and see pictures of Spider-Man. So when that gets taken away, nothing is left but a hollow shell, a perfect encapsulation of what Magic's once unique art has become, a delivery mechanism for someone else's nostalgia. And if you want to engage in nostalgia further, why not use the sponsor of this video, CoolStuffInc.com. CoolStuffInc.com has been sponsoring me for over a year now, and in that time I've made approximately one half of a video.
Help me!
I might have the work ethic of a depressed bohemian poet, but the good folks at CoolStuffInc.com work like they've just been given haste by the scions of the Spider.
What a sorry home for Jesper Eising's great art!
CoolStuffInc.com has singles, sealed product, and so much more. Do you want to pick up some of the Spider-Man cards I genuinely do love, like J. Jonah Jameson or Jackal Genius Geneticist? Then cruise your fine ass over to CoolStuffInc.com and use my code SPICE for 5% off any order. You deserve luxury cardboard with pictures of Spider-Man on it, and you can attain them with code SPICE at checkout for 5% off of any order. CoolStuffInc.com. Go thwip yourself. Jean Baudrillard wrote about hyperreality, where signs and symbols stand in for the real world, where we are so disconnected from things that simulations of those things become how we understand concepts. Sex through pornography, or revolution through anime. What is understood as real and fiction becomes blended together. Our references form from media more so than reality. Cheville is recognised as Craven the Hunter first and foremost, who was based off of macho tales of big game hunters from pamphlets and serials, which were themselves exaggerations of real people who nobly shot a bunch of animals into extinction. Now, Craven stands in the same frame as Cheville, but due to corporate law surrounding fictional realms, he must be changed and so is remolded into an echo of Cheville. If Universes Beyond is a cynical grab at collector cash beyond the pockets of Magic players, then Beyond the Omenpaths is the confirmation of that. We can see the emptiness here, the lack of depth and flavour laid bare when the coat of recognisable paint is stripped off and the functional mundanity of the vehicle's body is revealed. Magic has always been a commodity. To kid ourselves into believing it ever meant anything more to its owners is to engage in folly. It may mean more to you and me and the people who made and make it, but it exists as a thing to be sold, to grow into new markets, to be a ritual dagger to sacrifice artistic potential on the altar of consistency. The reason I spent so much time at the start of the video going in on certain cards and illuminating the good that exists here is to demonstrate that a potential alternative exists. That designers and artists are plainly able to create interesting reworks with a tightly limited scope, but the overall results of this product feels, quite frankly, disrespectful to that process. Had the company taken more time to cook the set, knowing this digital limitation, we may have seen something more broadly interesting. We could have seen mechanics blended so that they would translate across Marvel and Magic. Web slinging could have been a keyworded mechanic, one which had an evasive or luring effect on attacks that could have been retooled in Omenpath canon as a new form of multiversal travel. When Miles Morales thwips web over the Rhino and pulls him in to force a block, we could have seen Drix blessing humans with pseudo-weft walking, allowing them to slip through space or appear behind their foes on entirely new worlds. If even the hero and villain types had been removed, there exists a reality in which Magic designers got the chance to create a unique mirror world. One where a 5-color spider-human horde has overtaken a realm, and where a heroic band of Grixis scientists and goblins come together alongside elementals and symbiote warriors to battle against them. But be it for time or corporate demands for low-hanging recognizable tags be inserted into the game, this could never have come to fruition. Spider-Man has a multiverse, so does Magic. This should have been a slammable dunk for Wizards, an exercising in chiseling a unique product, one which did justice both to Spider-Man and the actual game we want to play. Instead, we get this. A digital mess, whose card gallery was released almost all in one go as if the company was embarrassed to acknowledge it. A handful of interesting choices were made, which must be commended on the designer's part, but on the whole, Through the Omenpaths is a reflection of a simulation of a symbol whose original meaning has been diminished over decades of replication. It is culture by way of homeopathy, so deeply diluted that it may as well not exist. Only when power is placed in the hands of artists and not held by executives who understand art as a business will we see some modicum of innovation. Only where risks are taken, only where the guarantee of profit isn't held as the be-all and end-all of creative production will the dying old be replaced by the new being born. Until then, we live in the time of monsters, where capital rules. Maybe we should walk towards that new way. 3 main trends present themselves in popular fiction featuring revolution. The Indigo Revolution pushes the promised envelope and succeeds. That's a spicy world building.
Under the paving stones, the beach.
Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolutions inevitable.
Huh? Oh, yeah, I've been working on something for most of the year, so that's where I've been. Next time you see me, we'll be talking about revolution and fascism for about 3 hours. Yeah, that's how the video's gonna end. Later! Hello everyone, I lied. This is how the video's ending. I'm sorry that I've broken my hiatus with such a short video. I'd been working really hard on this next piece, but unfortunately a whole lot of life got in the way. Both good and bad, which has impacted its production. I thought making like a short, silly, but also analytical piece would be appreciated by those who wonder if I'm still alive. And frankly, I was gagging to talk about this subset since its curious birth was announced. Oh my god, pardon me. Due to the length of this video, I can't read out patron names without buggering the viewer retention. I hate capital, I hate capital, I hate capital. But I really do want to thank you for sticking with me. I can appreciate that my slow updates haven't matched my previous years of output, but I do hope that what's coming down the pipeline will be worth the wait. How did you find the Spider-Man set and through the Omenpaths, and are there any parts that you particularly liked? Let me know down below. Engage with me, please. I hope you're all having a nice autumn. Please stay well, stay safe, develop communities of self-defense against the fash. And as always, stay spicy.